Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Crawley Borough Council's Planning Committee meeting. I'm Councillor Rana, Chair of the committee. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight. In the event of a fire alarm, please leave the building via the spiral staircase and the main reception door. Once outside, turn left onto Exchange Road. If you are unable to use the stairs, you will be guided to the evacuation lift. This meeting is being live streamed via the Council's YouTube channel. The comment function is not available. The Council is a data controller and will retain the data collected during the webcast in accordance with its data retention policy. Anyone seated in the public gallery should be aware that by entering the room, you are consenting to your image being captured by the automated camera system. Recordings will be used for webcasting or training purposes. The meeting agenda is available on the Council's website. Around these tables sit the committee members who will be taking decisions on the items. Officers of the Council are also in attendance, and I invite them to introduce themselves now, starting on my left. Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Jess Tamplin, Democratic Services Officer.
Good evening, I'm Chris Pegler, Data and Democracy Manager and the Interim Monitoring Officer.
Good evening, I'm Clem Smith, I'm the Head of Economy and Planning.
Good evening, I'm Jean McPherson, I'm the Group Manager for Development Management.
Good evening, I'm Hamish Walk, I'm Principal Planning Officer in Development Management.
Good evening, I'm Alex Sanders, Acting Principal Planning Officer in Development Management.
Thank you. Item 1 is apologies for absence. Do we have any apologies?
We've had apologies from Councillor Jaggard.
Thank you, Jess. Item 2 is disclosure of interest. Item 3 is lobbying declarations, and item 4 is site visit declarations, which will be taken together, and I will pass on to Jess. Thank you, Jess.
Thank you. I will call committee members' names one by one, so please declare any interest, any lobbying or any site visits in relation to any of the items. Councillor Ashraf.
I haven't been lobbied and have no interest to declare, and I haven't visited any of the sites. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bidwell.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare, have not been lobbied and have had no site visits.
Thank you. Councillor Charitan.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare. I have visited sites, all of the sites, that's for items 6, 7, 8 and 9. And I have been lobbied, as I think many of us have actually been lobbied over quite a long period of time by the West of Ifield lobby. I've had regular emails from them, and I suspect that many of us have. Thank you.
Can I suggest that we put that down in the minutes?
Okay, thank you. I'll get that noted for both of you as well. Councillor Hart, please.
I've got no disclosures of interest. I have been lobbied on the West of Ifield, as I'm also a resident there, and I don't know if that needs to be declared, that I'm a resident of Ifield regarding the West of Ifield development.
We'll note it as a personal but not a pecuniary interest, because A, you're not taking a decision as a committee, but also where you live compared to where the site is in the vicinity, but you're not arguably directly affected, is not directly on the roads. It's parallel roads, but not exactly on the road. But
I could be.
You could be, but you're not making a decision as well, so it's not pecuniary in that respect.
Okay.
Because it's a consultation. If we were taking the decision, we would consider it at a more pressing level. But
okay.
It's just a consultation.
Okay, I'd rather you were aware of it now.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely needs to be recorded.
Okay, thank you. And I haven't done any site visits.
Thank you. Councillor Hilton.
I'd like to make 2 declarations of interest. A personal non-prejudicial interest in item 6, as I'm a registered with the Bridge Medical Centre, which is adjacent to Fairlawn House, Wassand Lodge in Three Bridges. And my second declaration of interest is that as an individual before I got elected, I made representations on Section 19 consultation on the Horsham local plan concerning the West of Ifield development in terms of highways infrastructure. And as an individual, I've also made representations on the plan application for West of Ifield, and I declare a personal but non-prejudicial interest in that particular item, which is item 9. In terms of lobbying declarations, although notwithstanding what I've just said, I've never actually received anything. Well, I suppose we've received from Mr. Simons in terms of West of Ifield, but in terms of any other people from West of Ifield, I would say I've not really received any emails as an elected member. In terms of site visit declarations, I have visited the sites on items 6, 7, 8. In terms of 9, obviously it's a huge area, but actually, like Councillor Sue Mullins, we went to the exhibition at the Apple Tree Centre, which I believe was in April, which I presume would count as a site visit of sorts. Application 10, I haven't visited directly, but I'm aware of the site because I've gone to Crawley College in that area in the last 2-3 weeks on 2 occasions. And site item number 11, I visited that today as well.
If I can just make a couple of clarifications with you, please. The site visit, you said you were familiar with the site for agenda item 10. Have you visited that site either in planning terms or since the agenda was published for this meeting?
No, I haven't. And I visited in terms of my council duties, but not as a member of the planning committee.
In that case, I won't record it as an official site visit. And in terms of the lobbying on item 9, I think if you've received an email in relation to that, are you happy for me to record that as lobbying?
Okay. I'll record that as lobbying then. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Khan, please.
Good evening. I've got no interest to declare and I've not visited any sites, but I have received emails regarding item number 9, the Ifield West. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor Mullins.
Good evening. I've got no interest to declare. I have been lobbied on numerous occasions on item 9. I also know item 7, item 9, item 10, item 11. I know those areas very well, but I haven't done a visit as a member of the planning committee.
Okay, if you haven't visited those sites in relation to the planning application or since the agenda was published, then I probably wouldn't record those as a site visit, but if there are any in particular you would like me to record as a site visit, I'm happy to. Okay, thank you. Councillor Morgale, please.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare. I have been lobbied on item 9 and I've not visited any other sites.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey.
I have no interest to declare. I have been lobbied in a similar fashion to others by the West of Ifield campaign, but otherwise I've not been lobbied and I've not attended any site visits.
Thank you. Councillor Patel.
Good evening. I have no interest to declare. I haven't visited the sites, well, not with a planning hat on, and I've been lobbied on item number 9 only. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Rana, please.
Thank you. I have not done in-site visits. I have not been lobbied, and I have no interest to declare. Thank you. Item 5 is the approval of the minutes of the last meeting held on 4th November 2025. Does the committee agree that the minutes are an accurate record of the meeting? Thank you. We will now move on to agenda item 6, planning application CR/2021/0791/FUL Fairlawn House, Wassand Close. Please can the planning officer introduce the report?
Thank you. So Fairlawn House is a council-owned sheltered housing scheme currently containing 24 flats. It's located on Wassand Close, which is just off Three Bridges Road. You can see the building there. It's a 3-storey building, and you've got a car park just off the Wassand Close entrance, and the area of the building that we're actually concerned about is over on the right-hand side here. That's the east elevation of the building at ground floor level, and that is those windows serve the community hall, which I'll come on to talk about in a second. In the distance there you can see the doctor's surgery, and on the left hand side is the boundary with a commercial site to the east. You can see the doctor's surgery on the right hand side, and some of the ground floor elevations are currently blank, as you can see. And again there, on the right hand side you've got unfortunately a fairly dark view, but it's a view from within the existing hall looking out to the east towards the commercial site adjoining. You've got the existing laundry room on the left hand side and a photo there of the existing communal lounge, which wouldn't be affected by the current proposal. So if I show you the site plan. Unfortunately, all these plans for some reason have come out at 90 degrees, but that's the site there. So you can see Three Bridges Road running on the bottom, Wassand Close running northwards, and you've got a kind of H-shaped building at the moment, but you're down where the shaded area is down here. You've got a community hall, which is the big square element on the east side. And then in here, in these other parts, you've got smaller rooms which form a hairdresser's or medical room, which I think doubles as a hairdresser's room, a laundry, and there's a toilet in there as well. And then in the remaining part of the building are the existing flats and some other communal areas. And there's a car park for 9 vehicles just at the front there. So the proposal, let me just show you the existing floor plans. So you can see the community hall on the right hand side there, and this is the area that would be affected coming across here. You've got a medical room, laundry, toilet and a small kitchen. So these are the areas that are proposed to be converted. And if I show you the proposed ground floor plan. So the proposal is to convert the spaces that I've just talked about to form 3 new sheltered housing flats. Obviously, in principle, they would help to meet Crawley's needs for housing for older people, and are acceptable in that sense, as the report says. The existing communal laundry would be re-provided in this room here as part of the conversion work, so that facility would be retained for residents. The medical room would be lost, but as has already been mentioned by one of the councillors, there is a doctor's surgery immediately to the south. So I think obviously most residents, I would imagine, are patients at that surgery, but obviously every resident also has their own flat. So if they needed to be visited by a doctor, then that could take place within their flat. The loss of the hall is obviously unfortunate, but as the report sets out, there is a very low demand for it. It's not really a community hall in a sense that it's open to the wider community. It's generally for use by residents. There's currently a very low demand for functions within it, and there are other communal function space, both lounge facilities, but there's also a hobbies room and a day room. So there are plenty of alternative communal spaces for residents to live in. So we consider the loss of the hall is justified, and obviously, as I said, the proposal would create 3 new sheltered housing flats within the existing building footprint. Now, in terms of the impact it would have, the proposal is entirely within the footprint of the building. There would be minimal changes, really. There are existing windows here looking out onto the car park. They would light a bedroom and a lounge of one of the flats, flat 1 as it's labelled here. Their relationship to the car park is very similar to other flats further round the building, which look out in the same kind of general directions. They're existing windows, so there's no change to that elevation really, and that relationship is all considered acceptable. At the other end, you've got the windows windows and doors that currently serve the communal hall, which you saw in the photos. Again, they're existing, and there'd be no significant change to those. The main changes would be the proposed windows on the south elevation here and on the north elevation here. Now, to the north, they would face out onto a kind of courtyard area with other flats here and here. So there would be some views towards other flats, but they are similar to existing views within the development. And then to the south, you'd be looking towards the doctor's surgery, which is just over the boundary. There is a boundary fence, and the doctor's surgery windows are obscure glazed, so there is no danger there of any kind of overlooking issue. The other relationship to bear in mind is that these windows do look onto a boundary which is very close. Actually, I'll go back to that plan. The building is tight up to most of its boundaries. This is the commercial site here, and the existing and proposed windows are about 3 metres away from that boundary. But these buildings are single storey and not much higher than the boundary fence. There is a current application on this site for residential redevelopment, but that has not been determined yet. So I think if this application was determined first, that scheme would have to take into account the relationship. But as it stands, I don't think there's any significant impact on the adjoining commercial. So just to show you the elevations. So you've got some new windows going in on the south elevation as I described, so they'd be facing towards the doctor's surgery. And that is the elevation that would face towards the car park. And here you have the north elevation, which would face into that kind of courtyard area where the existing flats already face onto. And finally, the windows that would face east towards the commercial unit, but that layout is as existing really, so there's no additional impact there. The other issues raised by the application set out in the report, there's no changes to parking or access proposed, and the West Sussex Highways consider that is satisfactory. The site is in a sustainable location close to bus routes and Three Bridges station, and also to local shopping facilities. The one transport issue to be addressed by condition is to get details of cycle and mobility scooter parking for residents and staff. And then moving to the recommendation, that is to be subject to a Section 106 agreement to secure 3 new trees in accordance with our policy of one new tree per new dwelling, and also to secure the appropriate provision of affordable housing. In actual fact, this will be 100% affordable housing because it's a scheme that is owned and run by the council, but in order to comply with our planning policy, we will secure a minimal level of 40% through the Section 106 agreement. So subject to those and to the conditions listed in the report, the recommendation is for approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamish, for your presentation. There is one speaker for this item. Please may Councillor Jones approach the speaker's table. You have 3 minutes to speak, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My comments are related to both the Fairlawn House and Carey House proposals, as they cover very similar principles. So I hope that when the next item comes up, the committee will note that I support both applications from Crawley Homes tonight. Sheltered accommodation and the service that Crawley Borough Council provides through Crawley Homes is a source of great pride to us, and we've been enormously successful over the years in providing safer, good value accommodation to our more senior residents. And I believe any member of this council who's had the opportunity to visit our sheltered accommodation will have been delighted to see the quality of what is provided and the strong community spirit within their walls. Both of these schemes, Fairlawn being a prospective application but long delayed because of the water neutrality restrictions, and Carey House, where retrospective permission is being sought, are and will be additional units within their respective housing schemes that will ensure that even more residents are able to take up the local offer. There is absolutely a proven need, Chair, for these additional flats. According to recent council figures I have seen, there are 410 applicants on the register who are over 60 years old, who would qualify for sheltered homes. Most applicants need level access or lifted accommodation. In 2024, only 83 units of older persons accommodation became available, of which 10 of those were extra care, and there were 144 in Band A, which is, the highest priority. For Fairlawn House in Three Bridges, the proposal is for 3 one-bedroom flats, and Crawley Homes have tried to optimise the space as much as possible. These are the initial concept designs, and at technical design stage we will look to incorporate low-carbon technologies and have them fully accessible for incoming residents into the sheltered housing scheme. Carey House, they're 2 one-bedroom flats that were built with accessibility in mind. They do have an air source heat pump each and operate with a good energy efficiency. We're committed as a council to providing retirement homes that allow local people to live independently, but with the reassurance of knowing that someone is there to help if the circumstances require it. So, Madam Chair, I urge the committee to permit this application and the next one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. We will now move on to the debate. Do any members wish to speak? Please raise your hand. Yes, Councillor Bidwell.
Thank you, Chair. I just had 2 points to raise, actually. The first one is that the report states that the site is shown as potentially contaminated on council records, and I just wanted some clarity on what that meant.
Thank you, Hamid, if you'd like to answer.
Quite a lot of sites around Crawley are shown as potentially contaminated, generally due to their previous uses, which can be that they may be commercial uses. So I'm just turning to the part of the report. I'm not sure what the previous use of this site was, but I think the critical point here is that there's going to be no breaking through into the soil. They're just converting the existing building, so the floor, presumably a concrete slab of some kind, would remain. So there's no danger from the contamination here. Contamination causes risk when you're demolishing, say, clearing a building, and then breaking into the soil, and that's when the potential for contamination is. From memory, I have a feeling this may have been a former brickworks, but I'm not entirely sure. But it may be that kind of level of. So sites are frequently picked up as contaminated when it doesn't necessarily mean there's been a kind of intensive chemical use or something on the site. It can be far more relatively benign things. But in this case, I think the critical thing is the floor slab would remain, and there's no risk from the contamination.
Thank you for that. And my second query was, in an area where parking's sparse, are there any kind of changes that are due to happen regarding parking?
No, there are no. I mean, you can see from the site plan there is no space on the site to provide more parking. There are 9 parking spaces at the front of the site. You couldn't physically get a vehicle around the building to use any of the other spaces. Basically, there's a kind of walkway around the building with some low-level planting and things. So no, nothing is proposed other than us securing the cycle and mobility scooter parking for residents and staff. So offering alternative means other than the car. I would say every time I've visited, I haven't had any trouble parking. So although 9 spaces does seem relatively small, I would imagine that few of the residents have their own car, and that parking demands are relatively limited from the scheme itself.
Okay, do we know exactly how populated or how busy the area can become in terms of parking on average?
The site itself or the surrounding area?
The site itself. I'm just thinking because if it's, people over 60 that could be using the site, they are more likely to need access to be able to, park than other sites potentially.
Well, as I said, every time I visited, there hasn't been a problem parking. They do have emergency vehicle parking, and they do have 2 disabled parking spaces. So I think they're reasonably well provided. The number of spaces could be greater, but obviously that's as the scheme was built many years ago, and the addition of the 3 new flats, I think, would, and West Sussex feel as well, would have minimal additional impact compared to the existing 24 flats.
Thank you, Councillor Bidwell. I hope you found the answers satisfactory. So next is Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you. Just a couple of things. Were the residents that are in place now, were they consulted on the changes? Because it is quite a fundamental change to what they're used to. You also mentioned that the medical room at the moment seems to house the hairdressers. Is that going to be lost, or will there be an alternative place for that? Then the one side, you said it was 3 metres from the fence. Was that the doctor's side? Or was that the other side, the north? I thought commercial. Is that the commercial side, I think?
That was, the 3 metres I was talking about was over here on the commercial side, but the distance is very similar all around the building.
That's right. So is it a walkway, or is there any planting or landscaping?
There's a paved footpath that I think must run. I have only been around this part of the building, but I think it loops all the way around the building, and then there's a series of low-level planters and trees and things like that around the boundaries. So
I think those flats also had doors on the outside, so
yes,
they've got access to the outside.
Yeah, so the ground floor flats do have access to the outside, and although it's a very limited space, it's not that unattractive because of the planters. So there's vegetation out there. Yeah, so it's narrow, but it does enable residents to walk around and use that space.
Okay.
In terms of consultations, we don't appear to have notified the residents of the scheme, and I'm afraid it was so long ago now, I can't remember whether we put a site notice up. We probably would have done that, but I'm pretty certain that the staff have notified themselves existing residents, because certainly I remember when I was there were a couple of residents that I was talking to who were aware of the scheme, so I think they are aware of it. And sorry, I think you had a third question, but the hairdressers, yes. So the hairdressers is, I think, currently shares the medical space. Now, I don't know how intensely that's used. That may be that that's a historic use, and the hairdressers may already have moved to the day room or the hobbies room, but presumably that's what would happen in future if they to keep providing that service.
Thank you. Is Councillor Jasmine Khan?
Thank you, Chair. I just want to know that these flats, are there, because it says older people, is that like 60 plus? And also, do we have many people that have disabilities, or are they like equipped for disabled people?
I'm not aware that any of these flats have been designed to be fully for wheelchair users, but I'm also not sure what age Crawley homes would require residents to be before they could move in, but that's not really a planning issue, that's a management issue for them. But there are ramps up to the building, so even wheelchair users can certainly get in and out of the building. And it is, well, you can see there the doors are reasonably wide. I think you would be able to occupy those flats even if you had kind of low-level mobility difficulties, I would have thought.
Thank you. Thank you. Now, Councillor Julian Chariton, please.
Thank you, Chair. I want to back up your observation, because when I visited the site there were spaces available for cars, so it doesn't appear to be an issue, but that's, it's not very scientific, I've got to say. I guess I probably may speak for more than just myself, and I have slight unease about some aspects of this plan, I've got to say, with what you were describing about the views out some of the windows, the access and so on. And yes, maybe a little bit of nervousness about the lack of parking space. However, you've got to put that into context, as Councillor Jones was explaining to us. We need sheltered accommodation. This may not be perfect, and it isn't perfect. I'm tempted to ask if all options were explored around that building. I assume they were, and that was the best option that was available to accommodate, to increase the amount of accommodation. So yes, I'm speaking generally. Yes, I have a little bit of nervousness, but I think it has to go ahead. We need to provide sheltered accommodation. One of the things I was going to do is ask how many people are already there, but you answered that succinctly before. So it's 24 residents or 24 flats. So that answered that question. Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, sorry. Are you going to? Okay. Thank you. So now, Councillor Nick Hilton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just in response to Councillor Bidwell's first point about the points you made, I actually remember this site being developed. It was actually one of our more recent ones. It's actually more recent than Greenfields. It was developed in the late 80s, and I know about it because my friend lived in North Road in those cottages along, and it wasn't a brownfield site as such. It was a nice bit of wasteland, and obviously the residents at the time weren't happy about it, but because it was an open area, so there's no kind of industrial at that time, and it is one of the newest ones we've got. In terms of parking, I do know it regularly. I live very close to the area anyway. It's got its own parking. I haven't actually gone in because it says no parking for residents only. But actually outside, although it's quite a busy doctor's surgery, it's permanent parking, and there's always spaces. I've got a permit which I can use if it's raining. I have to pop round. So I don't really see parking as a problem. It is an existing shelter accommodation, and the plans dovetail in what we've got already. I think the point about the medical room is important. It is right next to the doctor's surgery. If the hall is unused, the hall is underutilised, we should be putting it to better use if we can. And in terms of, just generally, in terms of particular developments, there is an unmet housing need still for sheltered housing. The comments Councillor Jones made about 410 people on the list, and when I saw this, I think I'm really proud of our sheltered housing in my other as a councillor going back many years. But I think when I first thought about it, I thought, oh, that's great because it will be releasing family homes, which perhaps are used for other things. But of course, things have changed in the last 30, 40 years in that a lot of people still have to work because of private rented accommodation. There could be actual people in housing need over the age of 60 who might become homeless themselves, and this will be ideal for those kind of people. So I think it's a good scheme. It's an existing scheme, and I have no real problem with it. So. And I think some of the questions on parking and the state of the land, I think, have probably been addressed during this discussion.
Thank you, Councillor Hilton. That was very good. So, do any other members wish to speak or have any comments to make? Any queries? No? Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is permit. As a chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please, can I have a show of hands for all those for? Thank you. All those against? And all those abstaining? That's great, thank you. Application CR/2021/0791/FUL has been permitted. Agenda item 7 is planning application CR/2023/0133/FUL Carey House, Town Barn Road. Please can the planning officer introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This, as you'll see in a minute, is a very, very similar application to the one that you've just discussed. One of the key differences is this is a retrospective application, and since I sat down here this evening, I've realised that there needs to be a slight change to the recommendation, which is that, if I can find the right page, the first condition, it's been written with the standard 3-year implementation period, condition 1 in the report. It doesn't need that because the application is retrospective, so the recommendation is slightly amended to delete condition 1. Now, in terms of the application, this again is for conversion of some existing space within a sheltered housing scheme to form, in this case, 2 additional sheltered housing units. As I said, it is retrospective, so those 2 units are already in place. If you look at the photos there, there's 2 ground floor units here. That's one of them, this side of the staircase, and you can also see its air source heat pump. So there's 3 windows there. The windows have been replaced, but there were windows there before. And then from the other side, I was trying to show you the boundary treatment, but there is an additional flat the other side of the staircase, which you can just see in the photos. The boundary treatment is a timber fence, you can see, and the school is the other side of that. And then a couple of internal photos. So this is the corridor that serves the 2 flats, and number 34 is one of the 2 new flats. The other one is further down. On the right is unfortunately a fairly blurry photo, but that I had to take it through the glass door. But that is the replacement hairdresser's room. So in this case, there was a hairdresser's room in the original layout, as I'll show you in a second, and that has been replaced, and that is the new unit. So in terms of the building, it's on the corner of West Green Drive and Town Barn Road, but accessed off Town Barn Road. The area that you can just about see in red there, that's the site of the 2 flats, and the hairdresser's room is on the end here. You've got a footpath running along here and the school over this side, and the car park to serve Carey House is just here. And Carey House is a kind of square shape, and it does have a central garden area, courtyard. So you can see there the shape of the building with the central courtyard. You come in the front entrance here, in the lobby area over here. And the 2 flats that have been created are in spaces back here. You can just about see the hairdresser's room, or the old hairdresser's room, which was that space there. And then there were a series of stores for different purposes around, which are no longer required. And that's where the space was found to create the two new flats. If I show you the floor plan. So you can see some of the stores at this end of the corridor are remaining in the boiler room. You've got the 2 new flats that have been created in this space, and then the new hairdresser's room is over here on the left-hand side. So the flats have bedrooms and their lounges facing out onto the grassed area that you saw before. And then they have no windows onto the corridor, but they do have their 2, obviously their entrance doors onto the corridor. So retrospective planning permission is sought for this. Again, as with Fairlawn House, the works are entirely internal except for the 2 air source heat pumps. The uses, again, the principle is considered acceptable. In this case, there's no loss of a hall. The only potential loss of a community facility was the hairdressers, but that has been re-provided in a room down here. There's minimal impact externally. The windows simply look out onto the boundary fence, so there's no kind of neighbour amenity issues. The car park is existing, and from memory, it has about 16 or 17 spaces, I think. West Sussex Highways have again raised no condition, and we're recommending the cycle and mobility store condition. So the recommendation is almost identical to the one for Fairlawn, with the section 106 to secure affordable housing and tree planting, and subject to very similar conditions, but as I said at the start, with the deletion of condition 1, because this is retrospective. It has, as Councillor Jones said, been held up by water neutrality, and I think the works had already started by the time that kicked in, which I think is why it became retrospective, but we've not been able to determine it until now because of water neutrality. Thank you.
Once again, thank you, Hamish. There are no speakers for this item, so we will move on to the debate. Do any committee members wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Bidwell.
I just wanted to raise attention to the responses that were received. So there were a couple of responses received from occupants. And the first one is that there was lack of communication about the proposal received. Were any communications actually made to residents about this?
Yes, we've sent consultation letters to every resident of Carey House.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak or any queries? Yes.
Just a question about the work that had commenced. You mentioned it earlier that it commenced before the water nutrition. So what had been done yet then?
Well, I think that they had started the conversion works to form the two flats, and were then halfway through those works when water neutrality hit, I think. So at that stage, I think the decision was made to carry on, even though with water neutrality in place, or until that was resolved, we weren't able to grant planning permission for them. So the flats are occupied. I think really they were just unlucky that they started work, obviously at their own risk, but were then caught by water neutrality, which at the time was entirely unexpected. It came out of the blue from Natural England. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Did you say the flats are occupied?
They are occupied, yes. Yeah, so this is a retrospective application. The other one wasn't, but this one is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other members? Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit. As the chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the vice chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please, can I have a show of hands for all those for? All those against? And all those abstaining? Thank you. Application CR/2023/0133/FUL has been permitted. Agenda item 8 is planning application CR/2025/0106/FUL 26 to 32 Gainsborough House, Pegler Way. Please can the planning officer introduce the report? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application, as just mentioned, relates to Gainsborough House, which is a 3-storey building located on the corner of Pegler Way and the High Street. Okay, so this is the site location plan, which shows Pegler Way running along the bottom here with the top of the High Street to the west, as the east here. The red line shows the extent of the application site, and the blue line shows land within the applicant's control but not forming part of this planning application. And this is the block plan, which just shows a more sort of zoomed in version. As I mentioned, the blue line is in the applicant's control, but not forming part of this application. So this has 11 flats in it, the first and second floors, and the ground floor is commercial. But the application site relates to the remainder of Gainsborough House, which is for 23 flats comprising 20 one-bed units, 3 2-bed units. There's parking to the rear of the site here and a decked car park, and access is via Ifield Road to get to the back of the building. Sorry. This is the ground floor plan. The main entrance is here on the corner of the High Street and Pegler Way, and also to the back here from the Undercroft and the car park from Ifield Drive. This ground floor has 6 flats, 3 are 2 beds and 3 are 1 beds. And then this shows the first floor. It's slightly larger, as I mentioned, there is an undercroft, so the ground floor has less units than the first floor. This accommodates 9 flats, which are all 1 bed units. And then this is the second floor, which has 8 1 bed units. This shows the east and the north elevations. So the east elevation doesn't form part of the planning application, but just for completeness. So this shows the commercial units on the ground floor, and upstairs are residential units which have already been converted. And then the north elevation from Pegler Way shows the majority of the application site, bar the bit on the corner here. This is the entrance in here. And then turning to the west elevation. So this is looking back up Pegler Way from the car park to the sort of side rear of the building. And then the south is the view from the car park from Ifield Road, looking back onto the building with the, you can see the undercroft there, which I mentioned. This just shows the proposed, well, the car park's there, no changes are actually being made, but it shows that there's the lower and the upper deck. This is all the cycle parking here, secure cycle storage space for 42 spaces. So I should have said the car park is for 40 spaces. This again shows the entrance at the back here. There's a bin stall, there's a small amenity area and a bit more parking over here. I move to the photos. So that shows you Gainsborough House. So these are the commercial units not forming part of the application. This is the door to the flats here, and then shows the remainder of the building. Again, this is looking back up Pegler Way, and then this shows the view across the car park here. This is the rear of the building with the undercroft, the bin store. This is the car park here, which takes you up to the upper deck, and this takes you down to the lower deck. This again is the rear. This door here is for the commercial units, so it doesn't form part of this application. And then looking back under the undercroft and the parking area, this is the access to the flats. And again, this is just over the car park, just to give you a kind of idea of the space. So I'd move on to my assessment. As mentioned in paragraph 2.3 of the report, this application was originally submitted as prior approval under Part MA of the Town and Country Planning General Permitted Development Order for the change of use from offices to residential. However, work commenced on site before water neutrality was demonstrated. This was in conflict with the Conservation and Habitats regulations and resulted in permitted development rights being revoked, and full planning was therefore required. So this is retrospective. They'd already done the work, hadn't realised about the water neutrality requirements, and then stopped work. So the flats have been kind of kitted out to a point, but they're not occupied, and work is not ongoing at the moment. So the development results in the loss of Grade B office space within the town centre, which required justification. The current market demand is for Grade A office space and not Grade B. Officers accept that the previous office space did not meet the current demand, and there are numerous other similar office buildings on the market in the locality for Grade B space. Therefore, considering the lack of market demand for this type of office space and recognition that the town centre is identified as a broad housing location, the development is accepted in principle. The proposal would meet the housing mix test and therefore would be acceptable in this regard. In terms of acceptability of the development for future occupants, all of the units would exceed the nationally described space standards. The proposal is considered acceptable in terms of daylight and sunlight, and an area of external private amenity space would be provided. As such, officers consider that a good standard of accommodation for future occupants would be achieved. There will be no impact on the street scene or conservation area, as no changes are proposed to the external appearance of the building. There will be no adverse impact in terms of noise, and conditions are suggested to ensure this. The proposal would provide 40 car parking spaces, which meets the required standards for this proposal, as well as the recently completed 11 flats to the front of the building. 42 secure and covered cycle spaces would also be compliant with policy. The proposal meets the sustainability requirements, and there will be a small uplift in biodiversity enhancements. In terms of affordable housing, and by way of an update, negotiations have concluded and an affordable housing contribution of £100,000 would be sought for this development. This figure is based on the applicant's viability. This has been discussed with the Council's Housing Enabling and Development Officer, who is in agreement with this amount. Officers consider that the proposed sum represents the maximum reasonable contribution that can be robustly justified in viability terms. On-site affordable housing was considered, but cannot viably be supported given the scheme's layout, which is why a financial contribution of £100,000 towards off-site affordable is sought and will be secured via Section 106 agreement. Contributions will also be sought for open space of £18,525 and tree planting of £16,100, which will also be secured by legal agreement. So to conclude, officers considered that the proposal would be acceptable and the applications recommended for approval subject to the conclusion of the legal agreement seeking the contributions that I've just mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, for your very detailed presentation. We have one speaker for this item. Please will Jonathan McDermott approach the speaker's table. The microphone is turned on with the right-hand button. You have 3 minutes to speak, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chairman and members. My thanks to your officer for a detailed presentation there and for working with us and bringing this application finally to a conclusion. I wanted to provide some context on how we got here. My client unfortunately took advice and guidance from my predecessor consultant, with a second consultant who has assisted on this. And the failure of that advice directly led to where we are, a retrospective application for an otherwise nearly complete scheme. The applicant essentially took that on trust. And that is what happens in the client-consultant relationship sometimes. What you have before you, as per your incredibly detailed report, is a proposal that is policy compliant, that is an acceptable form of development in a town centre location, complies with Para 125 of the National Planning Policy Framework and your own policies, provides for an appropriate size of units and an appropriate mix of units, considering a town centre location isn't really suited for family accommodation, it's suited more for smaller units, really appropriate for a young person seeking to move out of home for the first time. We note there's no environmental health objection on this. It is sustainable, and we've put on enhancements in order to provide some external amenity space to what is otherwise a hard urban site. Affordable housing has been concluded, and we're very happy to confirm what your officer said in terms of the contributions that have been sought and agreed. And that includes a tree contribution and an open space contribution. I won't take up any more of your valuable time, but commend the scheme to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McDermott. We will now move on to the debate. Do any committee members wish to speak? Please raise your hand. Yes, Councillor Sue Mullin.
Thank you. I'm very disappointed that we not have to achieve any affordable housing out of this. I mean, these flats are going to be in great demand, I'm quite sure, as you know, housing is in Crawley. And having looked at the flats that are around that similar area, they are also in great demand. but they're not going to be affordable for, I mean, it was just mentioned, probably available to young people moving out of home. Well, I'm afraid the sort of prices those flats are going to be, they're not going to be available for most of the people in Crawley moving out of their parents' homes, especially with 23 flats available there. I would have thought perhaps we could have secured something on a more affordable level. And I'm glad that you've finished the negotiations now and that we've got the £100,000 sort of payoff, if you like, if you want to call it that. But £100,000 doesn't go very far in the housing market in Crawley to secure affordable housing for people on our waiting list. And I'm also glad that we're having to, a contribution for trees and for open space, but again, not on that site, which is quite a constricted site, and I do understand that. Other than that, I can't see any reason to go against it, but I have to express the fact that I'm disappointed that we couldn't secure any affordable housing out of it.
Thank you, Councillor Mullins. Do any councillors wish to speak, please? Any queries? Any questions? No? Okay,
Oh, sorry, can I just come back?
Yes, of course,
One
you
more
may.
I meant to mention, I presume these new flats will all be, because it's been converted from offices, they'll all be fairly high spec with double glazing and up to the minute heating systems and so on. You know, planning for the future.
Yes, they will. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, can I just echo Councillor Sue Mullins' point about the lack of affordable housing in such a central town centre site? And I'm quite new to the planning committee, as other members will know, but I wonder why we can't enforce it in any way. That would be my general question.
There's been a lot of negotiation, there's been viability reports which have been independently verified and discussed with, as I said, the in-house housing enabling officer. This was the best that we could get through the negotiations in terms of an offside contribution. We did look at on-site as well, but because of the layout and because it's a conversion, it would be quite problematic to provide a mix internally. So that was why the external contribution was we came to that conclusion in the end. But we have worked very hard to negotiate this.
Thank you. I also like to add, I mean, these flats, I mean, they're in a very good area in the heart of a town centre, and they will definitely appeal to young people, young single people without children. So, I mean, I think they will be very, appealing to everyone, actually, who wish to take them. Thank you. So we will now move on to the vote. Oh, sorry.
No, it's not your fault, it's me. I think because we keep on saying that young people are going to be able to afford these places, I really want to know how much is each flat going to be. And of course, I think for a young person to move out of their parents' house, I don't think they're going to be really able to afford these houses unless, I don't know, rent. Will they be rented or they can buy them?
I can't answer the question as to how much. It's not really a planning question. I don't know what the mix will be. I don't know if they will all be rentals or they sell them. I'm not sure what the mix will be. It might be a bit of both, but I think probably rented.
Okay, any other Councillor Bidwell?
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to thank the officers as well for the work on this. I appreciate that the negotiations. Thank you for the work on that.
Okay, so any more questions now? So we just move on to the vote now. We will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit. As a chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please, can I have a show of hands for all those for? All those against? And all those abstaining? Thank you. Application CR/2025/0106/FUL has been permitted. Now we will move on to agenda item 9 is a consultation response for planning application CR/2025/0334/CON land west of Ifield, Charlwood Road. Please can the planning officer introduce the report?
Thank you very much, Chair. This item is a slightly unusual item for the committee, as Crawley Borough Council are not the decision-making authority in this case. As you'll see from the plan on the screen, all the land within the red line is within Horsham District. This development is strategic development. It's for an outline application with all matters reserved for up to 3,000 homes. Commercial, business and service uses, industrial use, storage and distribution use, a hotel, community and education facilities, gypsy and traveller pitches, public open space with sport pitches, recreation and other facilities. And in detail, it's also for enabling infrastructure, including a western multimodal corridor, which is a main road, if you like, and also a primary access corridor, which I'll show you on some drawings in a moment, which will effectively allow the groundworks and the access points to be created to the development, along with allowing servicing for a secondary school site, which the applicants hope to deliver early in the phasing. So the application site, as you'll see from the screen, if I just enlarge it slightly, is land, I suppose we know, west of Ifield. So if we start at the northern end, I hope people can see that. It's all the land within the red line. So that the road coming down here is Ifield Avenue, and then it turns in and is known as Charlwood Road when it gets to Horsham. This is is Rusper Road, Ifield Green, that comes up to the junction. This is the moated site, Ifield Court. And further down we've got Ifield Village and the conservation area. This is Rusper Road running down on the right-hand side. And the land is the open fields and farmland to the west. Further south, we've got the golf course, Ifield Golf Course, which is also part of the development site, the whole golf course. And as to say, the land wraps around the houses that form a linear pattern along Rusper Road. Obviously, they say the red line is all within Horsham District. The administrative boundary, obviously, between Crawley and Horsham roughly follows the watercourse Ifield Brook up the eastern side here, so along this meandering boundary. So this is a drawing of the site topography. So the land is relatively flat and open, certainly the northern portion of the site, and then rises as you go to the northwest. You have the River Mole, which intersects through the middle of the site, sort of east to west, roughly, and Ifield Brook, which runs along the eastern boundary, flowing northwards. Obviously, on this near side, you've got Ifield Meadows and the Rusper Road playing fields, and then Ifield Village Conservation Area to the north. And then the land rises as you get to the golf course. So this area, as you'll see through the middle of the golf course, is actually on quite a ridge, and the land is rising here. So this is obviously more man-made because it's been changed by the engineering works needed to form the golf course. So the land broadly slopes from south to north. say CBC are a statutory consultee on this application due to the scale of the development and the proximity of it to the borough boundary. And we've been consulted by Horsham District Council, who are the decision-making authority on this planning application. This officer report has been prepared by officers in order to provide a comprehensive response to Horsham District Council on the relevant planning matters relating to Crawley Borough and its residents. It reflects the view of the council as the local planning authority. It does not reflect the view of other consultees, amenity groups or individuals who may be within the borough, as those representations should have been made directly to Horsham District Council. As such a large-scale strategic development, the Planning Committee are invited to comment upon the report and consider this application prior to the comments being formally submitted to Crawley Borough Council. By Crawley Borough Council as a consultee response to Horsham District Council. Already described the site level, so I'll just go on now to show you the layout plans. Just reduce those slightly. So as I've said, this is a hybrid planning application, which means that it's part in outline and part detailed information. So the outline application is for the neighbourhood itself and all the sort of elements that comprise that, and the detailed element is just for the roads. So if we take the road infrastructure, the main road infrastructure is in detail, and this is a road that extends from Ifield Avenue or Charlwood Road southwards through the site, through the field, over Ifield, the River Mole further down, and connects to the sort of southwest of the site near Russborough Road. And this road is referred in the report as the Crawley Western multimodal corridor. The second main road for the development comes in through the entrance to Ifield Golf Course and is known as the primary route, and that runs east to west across the centre of the golf course land. And again, there's a connection between that and the multimodal corridor. The idea is that this site these roads would be delivered early in the development to enable the access or to the site of the proposed secondary school, which is where the cursor is on the screen now. I don't know if you can see that. I can enlarge it. So this is the secondary school site here. So this road would be delivered early. The other idea is that obviously the main link road would also be delivered early. It's the first phase to, if you like, provide vehicular access to the development parcels. The idea is that the Russborough Road, which comes in from the west, would be closed once these two roads are completed, and effectively traffic coming in from Russborough would be diverted along Russborough Road and then up the new road and onto Ifield Avenue. And similarly, if you wanted to go to Russborough from Ifield, you would have to effectively go up to Ifield Avenue along and then down the road to get there. Effectively, this would become a residents-only route for those that are already on Russborough Road. So that's the landscape plan. I'll just show you the other drawings. This is the highways drawing or the parameter plan for the roads and movement. Just want to get it the right size. So this shows in grey the main road that comes down through the middle of the site. and then the primary route at the bottom. I should say that the primary route, the idea is that there would be a bus gate at the eastern end where my cursor is again. So only public transport would be able to come in and out through that access. Future occupants of the development would have to come in and out by private vehicle using the new Western multimodal corridor. The dotted lines are also sort of primary accesses shown on the indicative master plan. As you'll note, there is one that's missing, and that's the one that crosses Ifield Brook Meadows, but I'll come to that later. And this drawing shows the land uses for the site. So you'll see from this that most of the development is centred towards the southern part of the site, the buildable part of the land being the sort of southern and eastern end of the golf course. And the yellow areas you see are the residential parcels. The pink areas are the indicative school sites. The orange areas are potentially the neighbourhood centre areas. And the blue land up the road here is employment use. And then there's a hatched area over this side, which potentially is a gypsy and traveller site, but the area is far too large for that, and they haven't defined that very well. And then the final drawing I'm going to show you is the building heights plan. So looking at the key, the purple areas are where the buildings would be at their tallest. This is grouped around the neighbourhood centre and the school. And then the building stories would drop in height to the north, and also back towards the boundary with Ifield and the other neighbouring properties. The road infrastructure, including its site drainage and the bridge across the River Mole, are proposed as part of the detailed part of the application, and details have been provided on levels and drainage and some information given on road design. The applicants state the development would come forward on a phased basis, the idea being the plots would be released in several phases. Say the road infrastructure intended to be delivered early with a secondary score. And the car access arrangements, as I've explained. So you'll see from sections 3 and 4 in the report that the site has been promoted by the applicants for some time now, but it was excluded from allocation in the Horsham District Local Plan Review document of 2015, which is currently Horsham's adopted development plan, albeit it's out of date. With this in mind, and housing need for the borough, which would need to be met on land at Crawley, CBC officers through our adopted local plan have carefully considered what urban extensions at Crawley would need to demonstrate in order to be supported by the Borough Council. And those criteria are set out in 5.7 of the officers' report, and the general headings used as a framework for the planning considerations for this application. Crawley Borough Council officers are strongly encouraging Horsham District Council to consider the merits of this development against the evidence in its this borough's up-to-date local plan, not just the at Crawley text, which is printed, but also the other policies in our local plan, which are up to date and have been found sound and are also listed in the report. The report is very detailed, so I only propose to give a very brief summary of some key points. So in terms of the principle of development, your officers are concerned that this development is not plan-led, so the justification for it has not been met and not been subject to scrutiny through examination. Crawley Borough Council has a long-standing in-principle objection to this development, and its evidence has not been subject to scrutiny and those issues resolved. So officers feel this decision is premature in advance of any local plan which Horsham District Council hope to progress now that the water neutrality position statement has been withdrawn. The application the applicant has picked and chosen various policies and guidance, and it's a particular concern that the up-to-date adopted evidence of Crawley's local plan has been disregarded. The importance of certainty through a plan-led process is a key issue for Crawley due to the need for a comprehensive western multimodal transport link connecting the A23 to the A264 in order to ease congestion on the west side of the town. While the applicants propose to deliver a section of this route, and that's this multimodal corridor as they describe it, through their side, there is no certainty that other elements could be delivered and that other piecemeal development may be considered at Crawley, which again would not lead to a suitably designed road in the longer term. Work has been done on junction design for the northern link access, which would be up here, to access across the CBC land. So evidence of future-proofing of the junction design needs to be demonstrated as an absolute minimum. In terms of traffic and transport, there are serious concerns raised about the lack of mitigation in terms of physical highway improvements and the amount of congestion this will place on the local highway network, most especially Ifield Avenue. Very little detail has been provided on these highway mitigations, and the approach relies heavily on encouragement of active travel, such as buses and cycling. But again, the applicants have provided little detail on the delivery and feasibility of these options. A key area of concern is reference to an active travel corridor across Ifield Brook Meadows. Stated as required by the transport assessment, but not shown on any of the drawings, including this movement and access parameter plan. The land, and in particular the farmland, is considered extremely sensitive landscape due to the setting and functional, visual and historic relationship these fields have with Ifield. It's a valued landscape by local residents for recreation, views and as access to the countryside. And this uninterrupted access would be severed by the development. The design of the road towards the northern end is intended to be elevated in order to bridge the River Mole, which comes across somewhere in the middle here, and remain out of the floodplain, and the drainage features and engineering operations, including an acoustic bund, will be needed to construct the road. While the road design is supposed to be detailed, there is little information on the elevational appearance of the road, any barriers or lighting features. But given it would comprise 4 vehicle lanes and at least 1 footpath and a cycleway, it will be a significant visual feature in the landscape, and it is considered to harm both Ifield Court Ancient Monument and also the setting of Ifield Village Conservation Area. I've got the bridge designs just below. Best I can show you is probably the artist's impression. which is not very clear. But as you can see, it's quite a considerable structure on an elevated embankment. It's at least 3 metres clearance under or over the watercourse. So this is going to be quite a feature in the landscape and will be on raised land going north. There's also a lack of detail about the existing footpaths and how Crawley residents using these routes could access the countryside westwards. Again, partly due to the design of the road and the width of it, but also the changing levels. And similarly, the land development parcels extend into this open landscape. Officers are concerned that these extend too far north. So if I put back up the land parcel map, which is, sorry, is this one. These land parcels here in particular, which are so close to the conservation area and this river valley, are considered to be extending too far north and too visually intrusive. And this landscape is extremely sensitive, and it would affect, both the heritage assets and the scale and form would sort of detract from the openness combined with the elevated road. So the amount of landscape taken from this sensitive area is not considered justified, and officers consider this is in part failure by the applicants to consider the Crawley evidence base on character, landscape and heritage when designing the development. Land to the north of these areas is also shown as recreational space. So if we go back to the plan, we've got sort of open areas here. But again, there's little detail as to what these would comprise of. But if it's sort of sports pitches or play areas, there's going to be lighting there. And again, at the moment, this is a very sensitive boundary with the conservation area. And there isn't really much detail on the lighting or visual impacts and the visual intrusion into this sensitive landscape. Impacts on trees and ecology are also of concern. The extent of engineering to deliver the road would result in considerable tree loss or compaction or damage to nearby trees due to the level changes, changes in ground conditions, and the lack of detail on required mitigations, including the transport link across the meadows, as well as other highway improvements that would be necessary along Crawley Avenue, and other widening to accommodate bus routes, etc., has at the moment an unquantifiable impact on trees and wildlife due to the lack of information. In terms of design quality, the loss of important views and landscape, Office considers this is in part due to the lack of the character analysis being done from the wider site area, which should have informed the layout. And as a consequence, the master plan isn't considered to reflect or retain the important areas of character, and the design elements of the areas, such as the neighbourhood centre, are considered poorly developed and illustrative. A sense of community and unidentifiable centre is a key component of a neighbourhood, and the mix of land uses that are shown on the parameter plan gives some concern, as the level of detail would not result in a cohesive layout. In terms of sustainability for buildings, the proposals considered to lack ambition, and energy and water efficiency should be a design aspiration in order to deliver an exemplar development. Turning to housing now, which is the brown areas on this drawing. Just zoom it back out. While the applicants have stated that affordable housing provision could meet Crawley's need, there is no mechanism in place to secure any affordable housing or any method to secure any affordable housing for anyone on Crawley's waiting list. Officers have a strong objection to the 35% level of affordable housing proposed, which is below the 40% evidenced as needed And there are concerns about the housing mix, whether the units would meet accessibility standards and how the percentage of affordable units are secured over a phased development. As I've said, the Gypsy and Traveller site is proposed, but no clear area for this use is identified. It's just the generally grey hatched or purple hatched area in the middle here. And officers feel this should be fixed on any parameter plan due to the specific site needs of the end users, including acoustic protection, and to ensure a suitable relationship with surrounding properties, both existing and proposed. Other elements of the development would potentially meet some of Crawley's unmet needs, for example, for secondary provision. However, there is concern that there needs to be controls in place in the event a development were permitted to prevent new occupants placing burdens on Crawley infrastructure, such as docked surgeries or recreational facilities. So such development should be phased. Overall, there appears to be over-provision of certain uses, such as retail, which could lead to harm in the neighbourhoods. And there's a hotel use, which is considered wholly inappropriate and unjustified in a neighbourhood centre. The employment provision could be complementary, but again, this would need to be controlled or conditioned in order to prevent oversupply with established oversupply in relation to established employment areas. Crawley are also concerned about the loss of the golf course, the facilities used by local residents and for which no alternative provision has been fully mitigated or demonstrated feasible. While alternative sports provision, such as a proposed swimming pool or games courts, could benefit the nearby residents, suitable alternative golf provision hasn't been identified. So the recommendation is to advise Horsham District Council that Crawley Borough Council objects to the application for the 8 reasons set out in the report, and that these reasons and a copy of the full officer report and appendices will be sent to Horsham District for their information. Those reasons include prematurity of the application, failure to address local character, harm to the landscape and heritage assets, impacts on Ifield Brook Meadows and the Rusper Road playing field green space, lack of affordable housing for Crawley Borough Council, loss of a golf course, harm to nearby neighbourhoods due to over-provision of retail and provision of non-neighbourhood floor space, and the burdens on existing road infrastructure with no mechanisms or certainty that sufficient highway mitigation or active travel measures can be delivered. Officers hope that constructive engagement will continue with Horsham District Council and Homes England to discuss these areas of concern. And you will note that we are asking for delegation to the Head of Economy and Planning to allow officers to engage rather than report any amendments or updates directly back to the committee. This is on the understanding that the in-principle objection to the development is maintained. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean, for your very excellent and passionate presentation. Once again, we have Councillor Jones, Michael Jones, to speak for this item. Please can Councillor Jones approach the speaker's table? Thank you.
Chair, members, I'm addressing the committee today to express my full support for the officer recommendation that Crawley Borough Council objects to the proposed west of Ifield development. This application is not just another housing scheme. It is a speculative, large-scale proposal, 3,000 homes, being pursued in the absence of an up-to-date Horsham local plan. That alone makes it premature. Strategic developments of this magnitude must be plan-led, not developer-led. Without that scrutiny, there is no certainty on critical infrastructure, housing mix, or environmental safeguards. Our concerns are clear and compelling. First, the application fails to respect Crawley's unique character as a compact new town within a countryside setting. The master plan ignores our local plan guidance and disregards the principles that have shaped Crawley for decades. Instead of integration, it offers an inward-looking design that severs our connection to the countryside. Second, the harm to heritage and landscape is undeniable. Ifield Village Conservation Area, Ifield Brook Meadows and Rusper Playing Fields are jewels of our borough, rich in history, biodiversity and community value. It is vital that these heritage and biodiversity assets continue to be protected. Third, this proposal fails our residents on affordable housing. Crawley needs a minimum of 40% of affordable provision as set out in our adopted local plan. No ifs, no buts. This application offers only 35% with no mechanism to guarantee homes for Crawley families. That is unacceptable, especially when we face a declared housing emergency, and it also goes against both the new Crawley local plan and the emerging Horsham local plan. Fourth, the infrastructure burden that this scheme will place on Crawley is enormous, and the proposals to address it from Homes England are totally inadequate. Our roads are already at capacity. The Western multimodal corridor is critical, yet this application provides no certainty on its full delivery. Without it, congestion will worsen, air quality will deteriorate, and sustainable transport ambitions will fail. And let us not forget the loss of Ifield Golf Course. Although outside our borough's boundaries, it is certainly recognised more widely as a valued recreational asset, offering high-quality golf facilities. The loss of such a beautiful community asset would require complete and comprehensive mitigation. Madam Chair, this is not about opposing growth. Crawley has always played its part in meeting housing need, but growth must be sustainable, well-designed and respectful of our environment and heritage. This application falls short on all of those counts. Indeed, this is a proposal for urban sprawl at its worst, and I cannot condone it. For these reasons, it is a speculative scheme and not local plan compliant, given the harm to character and heritage, given the inadequate affordable housing that provides no evidence that will address the needs of Crawley residents, and given the unresolved infrastructure impacts. I urge you to endorse the officer recommendation and send a clear message. Crawley deserves far better than this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. That was excellent, straight from the heart. We will now move on to a debate. Do any committee members wish to speak? Please raise your hands. Thank you. Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you. Oh, where to begin? I've been involved with this development ever since it was first promoted, and so I've visited the site on many, many occasions. I've taken part in the consultations, I've been to see the plans, I've talked to the people from Homes England who've come down to try to sell their wares, as it were. And nothing impresses me about it at all. And it doesn't seem to matter how many times you visit and raise objections and how many people visit and raise objections, the plans never seem to change. We still have a 4-lane road running across fields with plus cycle paths, plus footpaths, which end up exiting onto Rusper Road. Now, if anybody knows Ifield Road is a reasonably sized road, which then narrows down into the Rusper Road, which has no footpaths on either side, is single lane each side, and is already heavily congested with traffic coming in from that side into Crawley. To have a major road with a housing development with 3,000 homes planned for it, so that all of the cars will then be exiting out onto the Rusper Road, turning right onto Ifield Road and then straight through Crawley. That has to be one of the major objections to this whole plan. And although they talk about another access at the other end, they're already saying that is basically for buses and people walking on cycles. The distance sort of from where the centre will be into Ifield itself already means that most people will not walk that distance. They will not use that road to walk out that way, and they're very unlikely to use the other access onto the Rusper Road. It just is not a workable plan of any sort at all. Now, you come down to the secondary school that's proposed, and they keep on saying they're going to build that first. We know why they want to build that first, because we are short of house school places in Crawley, so therefore it's going to service people of Crawley. That means cars coming in from all over Crawley to access the secondary school in this new development. Nobody will come in there using public transport, and nobody will come in there on foot. The majority of people using that school will be coming in by cars, so that's more car movements. As for the housing mix, we've always in Crawley had always try to have a mixed development. We don't have zones of houses where we have these people live here and these people live there. But I've seen the plans for the housing areas, and the council housing, which will be one of the last areas to be developed, the social housing, the affordable housing, is all put in one part. And that one part is all flats. The other areas are designed for houses. The area with affordable housing and social housing is just flats, and it's all in one area. That is a ghetto in the making, and I'm not happy about that. We've always worked in Crawley on mixed development, people mixed together and having mixed communities. It works a lot better. This is, I think it's a predatory thing that's been imposed on us. It's imposed on our borders, just outside our borders. And whoever's developing this knows that the people there will need to access Crawley at all times for our schools, our doctors, our shops, our leisure facilities, everything that's here. And yet we get nothing from it. All the council tax from that area will go to Horsham. It doesn't come to Crawley at all. I know that's not a planning consideration, but it's most certainly a consideration for Crawley that has to carry the burden but get none of the benefits from it. There is no benefit to this development to Crawley whatsoever. Not at all. We have a good plan in Crawley where we have a forward plan of how we want Crawley to develop, and in the correct way and in the same pattern as it always has done. Horsham has been very tardy in coming forward with a plan. They still haven't got one in place, and we can't solve their plan problems by having something dumped onto the border of Crawley. That doesn't even begin to talk about all the other environmental or anything else that's will be raised by this thing. It's a huge development, has a huge impact on Crawley particularly, and it's something we should definitely turn down and object to on all counts. There is nothing to recommend it to us at all.
Brilliant, well done, Sue. Brilliant, well done, Sue. Councillor Julian Chariton, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd echo Councillor Mullins' comments there. But I would just wanted to add, as one of the Ifield councillors, I get direct feedback from residents of Ifield, and I can tell you they're not happy about this development at all. The lobbying notwithstanding, I speak to people in the area, and they can see, there are very, very few, and most of them are very level-headed people. There's nobody that I know of that feels inclined to support this application that they're aware of. And I've been to many of the meetings that they've been at. The feeling is incredibly strong. If we were to approve this, as it were, turn down the officer's recommendation, I don't think we'd be doing justice to the people of Ifield by doing that. I think they very much echo the kinds of issues that have been raised by the officers here. And until that's addressed, and this plan is the requested planning application is put in at the right time, I think we should refuse it. I totally support the officer's recommendation here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chariton. Thank you. Councillor Gilly Hart, please.
Thank you. It's, as Ifield councillor and an Ifield resident, following on from what Councillor Mullins said, and Councillor Chariton, with the notwithstanding the lobbying, but getting the comments even on the bus. Councillor Mullins was talking about the cars and the buses going through Rusborough Road, and maybe she remembers one of the consultations that we had regarding rail travel. It was one of the very first consultations that we attended, and they were talking about people not using cars and using public transport and cycling and using the railway station at Ifield. That would become the main commuter station from the west of Ifield. Ifield station already has a very short platform, and if you're travelling from London to Portsmouth, you've got to go in the front few carriages, otherwise you can't get off. Can you imagine another 3,500 houses, residents wanting to go from... And then they said that people wouldn't use cars, they would use bikes. We would finish up with a multi-storey cycle park. So it wouldn't just be impacting... It wouldn't just impact Ifield Avenue, it would be impacting the residential part of Ifield that surrounds the railway station. So I tend to agree with both of my colleagues and the report that it's just not wanted, it's not needed, and it's just not viable.
Thank you, Councillor Hart, absolutely. Do any other councillors wish to make a comment or any queries or anything? No? Okay, thank you. We will now move on to the debate. We will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to object. As a chair, I will move the recommendation. Can I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please, can I have a show of hands for all those for? All those against? What's this? Oh, no. Don't we do this first?
Yes, so for objection.
Oh, objection, sorry. Oh, sorry. I can start again then. All those for objection, please raise your hands. And all those abstaining. Thank you. The committee has agreed to object to application CR/2025-0334/con. Thank you. So item 10, agenda item 10 is planning application CR/2025/0520/NCCC Crawley College Road. Please can the planning officer introduce the report?
Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, this application relates to Crawley College and the recently constructed Institute of Technology building. I know everybody knows the site, but this the Institute of Technology building is located to the far south of the college site, access from Hazlitt Avenue East. You've got College Road running along the west, and then Northgate Avenue to the north. This shows the location of the Institute of Technology building, which is, you've probably seen, it is now there. They were due to occupy it recently, but I have heard kind of mixed messages as to whether or not there's anybody in there yet, but as you've seen, the building is there. So this application relates to, first of all, it was varying two conditions on the previous application. The first one related to the fire hydrant condition. They were going to provide a new one, but since the building's been constructed and further survey works have been undertaken, they can actually utilise the existing one. So that's the first condition that they wanted to vary. And then the second condition related to SUDs, and they didn't think they'd have time to deal with the submission of a SUDS verification plan prior to occupation. So what they wanted to do was vary the condition so that it was within 3 months of occupation. So it's a material amendment to the original permission, but it grants a brand new fresh application. So all the conditions that were on previously get reimposed. However, what I've done is taken it as an opportunity to update those conditions which have already been discharged, because several have already been discharged, or there were conditions that related to the construction of the actual building, which again obviously are no longer required. So it's also been an opportunity to update many of the other conditions as well, so that they now sort of read in accordance with details as approved. And I actually noticed another one, which condition 18, which also needs to be updated, because this one was discharged several months ago as well, regarding the biodiversity enhancement strategy. So whilst nothing's really changing, a lot of the conditions have been reworded, but nothing to the heart of the condition. The application is altering. The building, as I said, is there. It's really sort of clarification and to tidy up the decision notice. This just shows the building as it is in situ now. This is from Hazlitt Avenue East, and then this is from the front of the building, sort of viewed from College Road. and then this shows the existing fire hydrant, which, as I said, it is within the required 90-metre distance, and it has enough capacity to serve the building. The fire service are satisfied that the existing fire hydrant can be utilised, and the conditions have been updated at the end of the report. Specifically for the fire hydrant one, that's condition 20, and for the SUDS one is condition 11. But as I said, if you compare the two, the decision notices look different because I've updated a number of the conditions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alex, for your presentation. As there are no speakers for this item, we will move on to the vote. Do any debate, sorry about that, I'm getting tired now. Do any committee members wish to speak? Please raise your hand.
Just so that I understand this is sort of essentially a sort of tidying up exercise, could you give an example of, as it were, what you've done in terms of how things have panned out and where that relates, and not asking for lots of examples, just so it's clear in my head exactly what we're signing up to, so to speak, what we're agreeing to.
Yes, so for example, what I've done is for the biodiversity enhancement strategy, that's been approved already via a discharge of condition application. So they submitted the information to me several months ago. I've signed off the condition. But what I didn't want to do is put the same condition back on saying you need to submit a biodiversity enhancement strategy, knowing that they've already submitted one and it's been accepted. So what I've done is reworded it, so I can show you the one that I've done here. And that's basically what they all look like, which is to say shall be implemented in accordance with said documents which were approved under application CR 2023-0734 CC1, which then relates it back to the discharge of condition application. So that's what most of them where I've discharged them look like.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak?
I'll just come in here to ask Councillor Mullins if you wouldn't mind please abstaining on the vote for this, as you weren't present in the room for the officer's presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. As we have no more speakers, any members wishing to speak, we will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit. As a chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you. Please can I have a show of hands for all those for, all those against, and all those abstaining? Thank you. Oh, okay. Agenda item 11 is planning application CR/2025/0519/NCC Unit 3 Crawley Leisure Park, London Road. Please can the planning officer introduce the report?
Thank you. Yes, can I just start with an amendment to condition 3 as listed in your report? Condition 3 deals with the with acceptable uses of the commercial units within the leisure park that we'll be talking about. So there will be 5 units. As listed in the report, the condition restricts 3 of the units to be used for restaurant and cafe purposes. That's unit 3A, 3B and 3B1. And then 3C and 3D could be used for indoor sport, recreation and fitness, as set out in your report. The applicant has requested that the condition be slightly more flexible in allowing all 5 of the units to be used for any of those 2 uses, either as restaurant and cafe or for indoor sport, recreation and fitness, which officers think is acceptable for reasons that I'll come on to talk about in a second. So you will recall seeing this scheme very recently, I think 2 or 3 months ago, 2 or 3 meetings ago. It's a proposal to convert the former Nuffield gym on the leisure park. So you've got the leisure park site there, with the cinema up the top here, the various restaurants off to the eastern side, large car park in the centre and the multi-storey car park here, and Nuffield gym was in the bottom left-hand corner there, outlined in red. The permission was granted to convert that building into 4 separate commercial units. So there were 3 on the ground floor and then a single unit covering the whole of the first floor. And the intention was that the first floor would be the gym, 2 of the units would be restaurant stroke cafe uses, which would be roughly in this area here. And then at the southern end would be a soft play unit for children. Since the application was approved, work has started, and you will have, if you've been past, will have seen quite significant works going on there. The applicant is seeking what this application is called a minor material amendment application to the approved scheme. It kind of follows from discussions the applicant has had with potential occupiers of the units, and they are also seeking to create 5 units within the building rather than 4. In fact, there's a related, as the report says, a related non-material amendment application, and for technical planning reasons that I must admit I don't totally understand, but you can't they had to do that to change the description of the previously approved scheme to allow the 5 units, but for some reason, and it must be case law related, I think you can't do that through the current application, which is for a minor material amendment rather than a non-material amendment. So what we have before us is an application. If I just start by showing you the approved ground floor, so you can see there was Unit 3A in the top corner, the corner nearest the cinema, Unit 3B below that, and they were both approved as restaurant stroke cafe uses. Unit 3C wrapped around in an L shape behind them, and that was the proposed soft play unit. And the first floor, which I haven't got the approved plan, but it is just literally the whole of the first floor was proposed to be a gym. So the proposed change is to create a 3rd unit just here, Unit 3B1. There are some related changes here, a bit of the floor space cut out at the back of Unit 3B to create the same floor space for Unit 3C. So the balance of floor space in terms of square metres is the same, but it's divided here between 3 smaller units fronting the car park, the soft play unit here, and then the staircase up to Unit 3D on the first floor at the bottom. So the changes to allow 5 units have been dealt with through a non-material amendment application, but there are related to changes to things like the glazing along this frontage, which need to be dealt with through this application. So if I just run through those one by one, you can see the where the units are. Obviously, because there are now proposed to be 4 units along here rather than 3 with the staircase at the bottom, there are related changes to the shop fronts and glazing and the number of doors that are required. I will show you those on an elevation drawing shortly. But the other thing to note is that at the rear there is a staircase that just leads up to the roof. There's a servicing area on the roof, and they need to gain access to it. In the previously approved application, that staircase started at the bottom corner of the building down here, and it ran in a straight line along the side of the building. It had various landings to meet building regs requirements, but it got up to the same height at this point and then allowed access to a roof area here. The applicant is now proposing to do that as a kind of wraparound staircase here. It achieves the same ends, it gets them up to the same height, but it wraps around rather than just being a single staircase running the half the length of the building. There are other changes which I'll come on to show you, but they're to the 2 stair cores. So there's a stair core at the top here, and there's another one at the southern end, and they're both being slightly reduced in height. And then finally, in terms of the floor plan, so because of the increased kind of what will probably be restaurants along here. The length of that has increased slightly down here. If you remember when we considered it before, there are some planting and seating areas outside. So there's basically seating areas, but with planting troughs around them to enclose them and screen them from the car park. Because of the proposed additional unit, that area has been extended further southwards, and there are related changes to the parking layout. So the disabled parking spaces in that area have been relocated and moved around the corner. That in turn has resulted in the loss of 2 non-disabled spaces from that area, which are proposed to be re-provided on the ground floor of the multi-storey car park. You probably remember we had quite a lot of discussion about parking when the application was here before, so there is no change to the overall number of spaces proposed here. It's simply a bit of tweaking really to deal with the increased outdoor seating and planting area created there. So if I show you the elevations, sorry, I'll show you the proposed. So the proposed first floor plan is very similar. As I said, it is just a unit that covers the whole of the floor. The only change on that plan is that the staircase obviously appears on that drawing as well, as it does on the roof plan. So you can see the central plant deck area here, and the staircase comes up and facilitates access to it. So if we move on to the proposed elevations. So on the top one there, you can see how this is the back of the building. This is on the park side of the building. It's not really very visible because there are a large number of mature trees along that boundary in the park, so you don't get a good view of that. But you can see the staircase as it moves backwards and forwards to reach up to roof level. So what I was explaining before is it was originally approved starting here and running in a diagonal line up to that level with various landings as it went up. So that's one of the proposed changes. I don't think it's very significant. I think the staircase could work either way really. This is probably a neater solution really than having the staircase running along half the elevation. So that's one of the amendments that is proposed here. You can see the 2 stair cores that I mentioned here and here, and the only change to those is that they were approved with a small kind of glazed element at the top, and that has simply been taken off. It doesn't affect the usability of the stairs at all. They're just slightly lower than they were. That is the elevation that will face onto the car park. So the changes here, obviously there are now 5 units in that frontage, and you can see there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 doors to access those. So the shop fronts have a very similar appearance to what was previously approved, but they needed the additional door, and there is some additional glazing. I think if anything it improves the appearance because it allows the extent of glazing has increased, and it allows more views into those units and more sense of activity. The other change to note here is that there is this structure up here, the kind of hatched area, is a screen that will be sat off the building. It's about 2 metres away from the building. You can see at that end how it sticks out beyond that wall. Well, it does the same thing to this elevation, so it sits off it. As approved, it had columns coming down to support it, and what is now proposed is that it will be cantilevered off the building. So the columns that came down have now been deleted from the scheme, which again I think is an improvement. It creates an easier walk for pedestrians along the footpath, and actually it looks neater in design terms as well. And on the other elevations, you can see that, so these are the 2, that's one of the stair cores. It just had a small glazed area on the top before, which has been deleted. You can see here how the screen cantilevers out from the building, and it previously had supports coming down. So relatively minor changes there. And again, you can see the screen projecting out there. I think that covers all the changes that are proposed, the amendments that are proposed. There are a range of other issues that were covered in the previous report that I don't think is worth going through again now. I think I do have a plan that shows the proposed 2 replacement parking spaces. Yes. So Unit 3 is down here, and I've mentioned the minor amendments as parking spaces down here. You can see the pink hatching there in the ground floor of the multi-storey car park, where they're proposing to create 2 additional spaces so that there is no net loss of parking. Just coming back to the condition that I mentioned at the start, the proposed changes would allow any of the 5 units that are now proposed to be used for those 2 uses, restaurant and cafe, or the leisure and recreation type use. Class E, which they both fall within, is quite a wide-ranging use class, and it includes things like offices and light industrial and various other things that you really wouldn't want to see on the leisure park. And that's why we're recommending the condition. We are happy, and we have discussed this with the applicants, we're happy with the flexibility that they're proposing that any of the units could become either of those 2 uses. What office is more concerned about is the potential for, say, a light industrial unit going in there, which we would not think was appropriate on the leisure park. So we are happy with the condition as it's worded. It gives the people running the Unit 3 or the leisure park some options in terms of how they market them. Personally, I think it's unlikely that anything other than the 3 smaller units would become restaurants. I think the first floor, well, A, it's at the first floor, and secondly, it covers the whole building. I think it's unlikely that would switch to a restaurant use, and I think similarly the proposed soft play area is also unlikely to change, but it does give them that flexibility should they wish to do that. But officers are happy with it, and we are recommending approval subject to the conditions set out in the report. There are, as with the previous application, there are some other changes to conditions, but really they just tidy up where there's a reference to a drawing number, and that drawing number has changed because of the proposed amendments. The conditions are updated to address that as well. The water neutrality condition would have fallen away, but in actual fact it was the use condition was very similarly worded. It was worded previously for water neutrality reasons, but it's now being worded for the suitability of uses within the leisure park. Thank you.
Thank you, Hamish, for your thorough, detailed report. There are no speakers for this item, so we will now move on to the debate. Do any committee members wish to speak? Yes, Councillor Chariton, and then Councillor Bidwell. Thank you. Councillor Bidwell, you can go then. Thank you.
Mine was just a quick point. I don't know whether it's worth noting members who would have seen this application last time would have been lobbied, and whether it's worth noting this.
Yeah, I'll pull across the lobbying declarations from the previous meeting and apply those to this meeting as well. Thank you.
Did you want to ask any question, Councillor Bidwell? No. Okay, thank you. Councillor Chariton, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a couple of small questions. I'm curious about the stairwell at the redesigned staircase at the back there. So I'm not necessarily any business of ours, but I wondered why there was such a significant change in direction there. The slight concern about, was it originally planned that way so that to be able to move equipment and plant up there, and will they still be able to do that with the current design, for example? Is that going to be a problem to them? And it's probably more of a problem to them than it is to us as a planning committee. That's one aspect of curiosity. The other thing was the cantilevered front, that they were able to remove supporting structures. Leaves a small question in my mind. I'm guessing you're the experts. You know that from an engineering perspective whether that's acceptable or not. But I would be remiss if I didn't ask the question that whole structure will be still structurally sound, even with the absence of piers to support it. With the piers there merely as a belt and braces, I guess. And the third question, and again, this is within your province. I'm sure you've satisfied yourself that mixed use, if you like, or flexible use of that area, it is appropriate for each of those spaces. For example, there's a very small space there, and again, maybe this is more of an issue for the owners of the site rather than for ourselves. But a very small space like that, could it accommodate, what looks to be a small space? Could it accommodate a restaurant? Would there be reasons for us to be concerned if it was tried to be used as a restaurant? I presume because you have no objections in that. I'm just using that as an example that you've looked over that and you're thoroughly convinced, for lack of a better word, that if they try, for the use of any of the uses that you've mentioned, any of those spaces would be adequate, and there's no concerns on fire safety, drainage, and all the rest of those things. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of the staircase, the actual staircase is the same width. Obviously, if they were carrying items up to the roof, then there's going to be a lot more turning around here than there would be with the previously approved straight staircase. But I don't think there's any technical reason why we think they couldn't do it. The actual width as you go up the stairs is the same, and the turning space will be there, the landings will be there. So I don't really know why they're proposing that. My guess would be they've spoken to a staircase manufacturer who said it'd be a lot easier to build it like this than it would be with a long run, but I don't know. You're crediting us with skills that we don't have in terms of the cantilevering, I'm afraid. That would be building control. I have no idea whether the building can take the structure, but I'm assuming they're telling us it can. I don't think they would be proposing it to us if it couldn't, but it would be a matter for building control to deal with. And in terms of the unit sizes, yes, I don't think there's any problem there. The smaller units are the ones that would be likely to be the restaurants. They are of a similar size to the restaurants elsewhere on the leisure park, so they seem reasonable. But in terms of switching the uses around, I guess you could, in theory, have something like perhaps a small yoga studio going into one of the smaller units, and that would fall within the other kind of use that we're allowing, and I think would probably be acceptable and could form a part of the leisure park in the way that the gym does. So I don't have any particular concerns there. I suspect it will come down to more when they're marketing them, which occupiers want to go in. As far as I know, the occupiers they've been talking to and the previous proposal for the gym and the soft play and the restaurants is still what they're pursuing. But I think they just wanted a bit more flexibility in case, for whatever reason, those things fall through. But I would be surprised if there are any dramatic changes. I think the additional unit is likely to be a restaurant stroke cafe type use. And I think the two larger units are likely to fall within those other uses because they seem more suitable for those.
Thank you. Councillor Chowton, do you have any supplemental question?
I don't think so. Just to be sure that the question has been fully answered. It wasn't just the size, but also the each of those units is able to support any of the range of activities they're talking about.
To the best of my knowledge, yes, but obviously there are individual occupiers are going to have their own requirements, whether it be for kitchens or shower facilities or those sorts of things. Well, they'd have to deal with those themselves. That's not a planning issue really, but if an occupier wanted to go into a unit and it wasn't suitable because they couldn't fit showers, and they wouldn't be able to occupy it. But what we're saying is, in principle, those spaces are big enough that the two types of uses we're talking about could go in there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Mullins.
Thank you. Just a couple of questions. Providing another unit like that, which could be used as a restaurant or cafe, I notice there's no other access other than from the front. So I presume if you have something like that in there, they will require service vans or delivery vans to come in. Is that the only access they'll have to that particular unit? Because the other ones seem to have an access from the side there and don't have to use the front part, which is being laid out as a sort of seated area and so on. And then I just want to ask about, obviously, if they're going to be restaurants, you're going to be talking about extraction and aircon. Is there provision made for that on the front of the building? Because obviously it can't go up through the roof. If there's another usage on the next floor up, it's going to be used as a gym. And then really, with the proposed soft play area, I'm presuming that they will also want some kind of catering aspect within their own development in there. Because I've never been to a soft play place yet where they don't have a cafe bit where you can buy drinks and highly priced crisps for the kids while you're there. And then a question that probably was asked at the last meeting, which I wasn't at, sorry to say I was not here. The cladding on this, the screening on the front, is there a picture of what it's going to look like at all? Because I just had this horror thought in the back of my mind of the Morrison's building in Crawley, where the screening on the front is the ugliest thing I think I've ever seen in my life. I realise it's practical and it stops the sun shining through the windows, but pretty it's not. So could you just reassure me that it's not going to look quite like that?
Yes, dealing first with the service access, you're quite right. There is a corridor. So the service yard for the whole building
Is on the side there.
is at the top here. It's where the old access to the ramp to the first floor of the multi-storey car park was. That's being altered as part of the scheme that was previously approved. So the ground and first floor of the multi-storey car park will all be accessed from the same point. That enables them to create a kind of refuse and service area here. But you are quite right that within the building, there is a corridor coming in. Well, there's an external door here which will serve Unit 3A. There's a corridor coming down to serve Unit 3B, but yes, 3B, and then Unit 3B1, which is the smaller unit, does not have that internal access. So yes, I think that would have to be serviced from outside. It is the smallest unit, and I suspect it's probably going to be more a kind of cafe use than a restaurant. But yes, it would need to be serviced along the footpath outside. In terms of extractions, there are 2 or 3 conditions. Conditions 12 and 13 require details of those to be submitted. But until they know what use is going into each unit and who's the occupier and what their needs are, they can't do that. But they are aware of that, and I don't know whether you've seen the building while it's been... They basically took it right back to the frame. Yes, exactly. So I think they're aware of that issue, and I'm sure they'll be making provision within it for extraction units to be dealt with. They're aware of the conditions. Soft play, as you say, it's probably going to have some kind of catering as well and may need the same kind of system. The cladding... I don't have a lot more detail than that, to be honest. It's a kind of vertical slats built on the frame outside. The building wasn't particularly attractive before. All these buildings, they're big, they're clad, and actually I think they are genuinely trying to add a bit of interest to it. The windows actually will have openings, so the gym windows where they are will have an opening through to let light in through the slats. So it's just a design feature, really. How successful it will be, I don't know, but I think it does add a bit of interest to what would otherwise just be a large building clad in with cladding material on the outside.
Councillor Thomas Bidwell, thank you.
Thank you. So the last time this came to committee, there were questions, I think, from Councillor Jaggard regarding parking. I haven't seen, I'm not sure if I'm incorrect, but I haven't seen any changes here on there regarding that. Also, if there are going to be changes to the unit numbers, or that may only be a small amount, I wonder if there are any potential changes to the number of parking places we might need, depending on the change of how many people might be coming to the new unit.
I don't think there are likely to be significant or any change, probably. Paragraph 5.7 sets out the floor spaces of the proposed units, and assuming that they don't take advantage of the slightly more flexible condition, the floor spaces within the kind of food and drink uses and the other uses remain the same, even though there are now potentially 3 food and drink uses rather than the 2 that were previously approved. So I don't think in that sense there's any significant change. In terms of parking, things have moved on a little bit since the previous decision because the new lift has been installed in the car park now. So there were various changes that we secured through that previous permission, and some of those works have been done. Currently, obviously, the parking area outside Unit 3 is out of action because it's being used as construction space. Once that's brought back into use, I assume the other signage will happen, and the ramp to the multi... I'm not sure whether the ramp has been amended yet. But that will then happen, and then the changes that have all been agreed will be brought into use, hopefully with additional signage to make people more aware of the multi-storey car park, which, as you remember, was the key issue last time, is that was basically sat there pretty much empty even on Friday and Saturday nights. So yeah, they certainly are moving in the right direction in terms of some of the works that have been done.
Thank you. Very glad to hear the work's been ongoing.
Councillor Cheriton?
Yes, and not really a question, but but it actually is a question, because I think in the last planning application, I think in reference to the cladding, there was some discussion about, also some talk about some huge, great advertising hoardings being put up there. Is there still the plan for that? Just FYI for Sue.
It's an ongoing debate at the moment. There will be further. They will need to seek advertisement consent for the adverts. So the concern that we have is that these drawings show so that these grey areas here are proposed as advertisement panels. So you've got 4 on this side, and you've got another 4 around the north side of the building facing towards the car park. So the concern that was raised in the last report and again in this report is that we feel that's too much. I have today been sent a kind of indicative layout, which I'm afraid I haven't got with me, but it shows 5 panels along this frontage, which seems more sensible to me because it relates to the units on the ground floor, and that they would not be using the units around the north side of the building. But that will all be dealt with through a subsequent advertisement consent application, or probably more than one. But the applicants are well aware of our concerns, and that the concern that there could just be too much advertising going on this building. I mean, it's a leisure park where the signage there is fairly large. It's very obvious, so I don't have a particular problem with that, but I do think there's a kind of limit to the number of panels. But clearly in this case, each of the 5 units is going to want some kind of signage. So it's an ongoing debate really, but we are looking to keep signage down to a reasonable level there.
Thank you. Do any other members have any questions, any queries, any comments? No? Thank you. We will now move on to the vote. The recommendation is to permit. As the Chair, I will move the recommendation. May I ask the Vice Chair to second, please?
I second the recommendation.
Thank you, Thomas. Please, could I have a show of hands for all those for? All those against? And all those abstaining? Thank you. Application CR/2025-0519/NCC has been permitted. There is no supplemental agenda, but before we close the meeting, I would like to make some announcements. First, a change to the Constitution is being proposed. I will hand over to Democratic Services to give more details.
Thank you, and I will be quick because I'm aware that if we don't finish the meeting before 10 p.m, then we'll have to vote to extend for another 30 minutes. So, as committee members will know, Natural England has withdrawn its water neutrality position statement, so the council no longer requires new developments to be water neutral. Any applications that were permitted in the past with water neutrality conditions attached must still comply with them, unless developers apply to the local planning authority to remove or vary those conditions, which is done under what's called a Section 73 application under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. After submission to the council, Section 73 applications are currently delegated for decision to officers, unless they're in relation to major applications or those where the council is the applicant. Officers are now, however, proposing that the planning committee functions within the Constitution be updated to explicitly state that all Section 73 applications in relation to water neutrality are to be delegated to officers. The Chair and Vice Chair have been consulted on this, and it's agreed that this will speed up decision making, as the committee won't be required to be involved in the consideration of those applications, which are simply for removal or variation of conditions to already approved applications. So as this is a constitutional change and just for transparency, we believed it best just to highlight this to you as a committee. We'll also be consulting the Chair and Vice Chair of the Governance Committee, and then it will go to the full council for approval. Any questions or comments on that?
Thank you very much, Jess. So just before everyone goes, sorry, just a few minutes longer. So there's a further announcement, is that the Vice Chair and I have decided that as of January, all planning committee meetings will begin at 7 p.m, I'm afraid. We will be putting 2 extra meetings in the calendar in order to deal with the large number of applications for decision. This will be on Tuesday 27th January and Tuesday 24 February. You will receive an email and calendar invites this week. So thank you very much. The meeting is now closed at 21:51. Thank you everyone for attending and enjoy the rest of your evening. Good night.